and welcome everyone. This is our final session of our Spotlight series on PLM and its role in the age of Industry 4.0. I'm joined today by Katja van der Moon and James Robbie, who will tell you a little bit more about the CPR brands and how they go through and deliver the value and resiliency through the circular economy. So before we move to our speakers, I would like to remind you that today's session will take approximately 45 minutes, including a short Q&A session at the end. Since all participants are muted, I encourage you to use the chat box on the GoToWebinar to type your questions. First, Mathias Holgersson will tell us a little bit more about the PLM Center of Excellence in Scandinavia. So for those who joined our past sessions, it's going to be a short recap before we move to our key topic. So Mathias, over to you.
Thank you, Anna. And good afternoon and warm welcome to all of you. My name is Mathias Holgersson, and I'm the head of our Scandinavian PLM Center of Excellence. And first of all, thank you all for joining the webinar today. It's really nice to see that we have that many interested. Today we have James Robbie and Katja van Beaumont with us, and during their presentation you will learn about how to build value and resilience through the circular economy. But first, I would like to take the opportunity to inform you about our capabilities and the background to these webinars. So next slide, please. And first of all, a couple of months ago, Capgemini acquired Altran. Two industry leaders joined forces to support customers throughout the entire life cycle of products and services. Capgemini is a leader in consulting, IT services, and digital transformation. And Altran is a leader in engineering and R&D services. And together, we will focus on intelligent industry. Together, we will form a major global partner with more than 270,000 employees in more than 40 countries. And in Scandinavia, we will now have more than 5,000 consultants to support our customers. Next slide, please. When it comes to PLM and digital manufacturing, we have a strong global presence. We have more than 1,500 consultants working within the PLM area all over the globe. As a technology-independent partner, we can deal with solutions at different platforms. We have both global and local strategic alliances with the major software vendors like PTC, Siemens, Dassault, and Oras. And we also have a great global PLM footprint, as you can see in the lower left corner. We have customers in several different industry sectors like aerospace and defense, automotive, industrial equipment, high-tech, energy, consumer packaged goods, retail, and so on. Next slide, please. And from this year, we have also established a local PLM team, a Scandinavian PLM Center of Excellence. And with this growing team, we will have the ability to support our Scandinavian customers, both locally and globally. This team is just in its beginning, and we will continue to grow. At the same time, we will, of course, leverage our global capabilities and bring our global knowledge, experiences, and assets to our Scandinavian customers. Next slide, please. So what is it that we really do within PLM and digital manufacturing? Well, we offer end-to-end solutions at a flexible scale. We support our customers all the way from strategy, design and development of processes, implementations, rollouts, training, support, and so on. And we have the ability to scale. We have local experts in our local team. We have support from global experts and communities. And we have the alliances that I mentioned before. And finally, a dedicated Farshore PLM team. So to summarize, we offer end-to-end PLM and digital manufacturing solutions at a flexible scale. That's what we're doing in short terms. And today, we will learn more about the circular economy. And how is this connected to PLM? As per the esteemed MacArthur Foundation, the 3 basic principles of circular and sustainable economy are, as it says in the lower left corner, control finite stocks, circulate products at highest utility, design out negative externalities. The modern PLM solutions are playing a very major role in these areas. For example, closing the design loop. This is, for example, enabled by involving customer feedback in early design phases, which not only reduces product rate of failure, but also reduces cost and utilized resources. Adopting servitization. More and more PLM vendors offer PLM software as a service solution. And servitization is becoming more and more common. And it leads in the end to reduced infrastructure costs and better usage of resources, amongst other. Mass reduction in physical samples. The evolving 3D design tools and their connectivity with AR and PLM has made it possible to have a drastic reduction in the number of physical samples, which of course has a huge impact on the environment as a whole. And the final example, sustainable PLM. PLM solutions can be used to inform stakeholders about energy consumption impact during various product lifecycle stages to make a better informed decision considering the environment. So PLM is very well connected to the sustainability, and like in the Industry 4.0, it's a backbone. And with this short introduction to PLM and its connection to sustainability, I would like to hand over to Katja and James. So thank you.
Thanks, Marcus. So just by way of introduction, and I'll then, I'm Dr. James Roby. I lead the sustainability agenda for Capgemini. And as a group, we have really 2 focus areas. So part of my focus is around how do we minimize our own impacts as an organization, as a responsible business. We've committed to science-based targets. We've committed to driving down our own emissions and ultimately the path towards becoming a net zero business. But we also recognize that the biggest impact we can have as an organization is by working with our clients, with our partners. And so from that perspective, we have a second focus in terms of the global program, which is about how can we more effectively collaborate with our clients to look at their sustainability impacts. So before we dive into the circular economy, I thought it was worth just reflecting for a moment on the situation we find ourselves in at the moment. So if we go to the next slide, and we are, if you like, at a very strange point in history with the COVID crisis that's happening at the moment. We see a very great level of disruption to the way we live. Most countries are experiencing some form of lockdown, some sort of restriction in terms of travel and communications. And so we're riding this wave. And a lot of people, a lot of governments are focusing on the concern that recession may well follow the initial COVID crisis, as we see quite a significant shock to economic systems. And then behind that, we have another wave. And many are increasingly aware that this next wave of climate change, or we could put sustainability in here, is not that far away. And therefore, we need to be focusing in terms of COVID, we need to be focusing on the recovery from COVID, and many business leaders are now committed to a green recovery from COVID, and recognizing that we need to do that within the boundaries of the planet. If I go to the next slide, if I try to describe sustainability in a shape, then this is the shape that I would pick. If anyone is a biologist, they would recognize this shape from growing microbes in Petri dishes, where the quantity of microbes increases, increasingly getting faster to the point of the exhaustion of the carrying capacity of the Petri dish, and then the population of microbes then crashes. For anthropologists, you would think of things like the story of Easter Island, where the Easter Islanders gradually increased and increased their population over a period of probably 300 or 400 years, to the point where they exhausted the capacity of Easter Island to support them, and the resultant was a crash down. Now, this is a picture we see again and again in sustainability. On the next slide, I've just illustrated probably somewhere around 18 or 20 different graphs, all looking very similar to that in terms of that exponential increase. And the real challenge for us from a sustainability perspective is not so much the exponential increase, but it's how do we avoid the crash which happens on the right-hand side. So we can see that at the top right, world population has gone from a point where before the Industrial Revolution, we were about 1 billion people on the planet, to a point where we're about 8 billion people today. A challenge is how do we manage that escalation? So for me, this is the key, one of the key drivers when we think about sustainability. You can even think about carbon levels in the atmosphere in the same pattern if you look over the last couple of 100 years. So really, this is where we then start thinking about the circular economy, because increasingly we are taking more and more resources, and increasingly we are reliant on more and more resources into our supply chains. So I just wanted to pick 2 or 3 examples of graphs from a resource perspective where we see a similar trend. So on the next chart, you'll see a picture of resource throughput through the global economy over the bulk of the last century. And once again, with the exception of a few notable periods around major recessions or oil crises or the First and Second World War, you see that general picture of exponential increase. We can go to a much more specific example if we dive into the next slide, which is about rare earth elements. Again, elements that most of us are unaware of, but elements that we all take for granted every day because they're in every cell phone, every laptop that we take for granted. And you can see here again that exponential shift. And interestingly, you can also see some dynamics going on in terms of geopolitics and where those rare earth metals are coming from. And then finally, a topic often not talked about in great detail, but on the next slide, I've put some increases in terms of projected water consumption over the next few years. And once again, you can see the level of pressure that we are putting on the system. So really, this sort of sets the context to the challenge that we have from a sustainability perspective, and the context is why circular economy is so critical. If we go to the next slide and just unpack for a second, what do we mean by circular? Well, the starting point, I suppose, is our traditional economy, the linear economy, where we take raw materials, we produce goods, those goods are used, and those goods are then thrown away, or the end of life thrown away. Interestingly, some people have talked about that, and they've recognized from a business model, the quicker that they can take raw materials and get those raw materials through the linear chain and into a garbage bin, the quicker they can sell more. Now, the flip side to that is the circular economy, and stylized here is a perfect circle where we take raw materials, we put them into production, we use those materials, and then we recycle 100% of the product or 100% of the resource back into the production cycle. Now, of course, the reality is that we are somewhere in the middle, what I sometimes call the reuse economy or the semi-circular economy, where we are seeing some recycling, and it's been increasing over time, but it is still only some recycling. And Katya and I wrote a report, and there's a link at the end last year, which was just reflecting on this and reflecting on how you might address this. So I come to my last slide. We used the 6 capitals model as a way of unpacking the flows of resources within the circular economy, and to start to unpack where you might get leaks and losses. So whether they are leaks at the production of the raw materials, whether they're leaks at production or use or end of use stage, and you can start to unpack your entire process to really figure out how you can close the loop as tightly as possible. So with that background, I'd like to sort of hand over to Katja, who's going to explore a little bit more detail some practical examples in this space.
Thank you, James. So let me briefly introduce myself. I've been working with Capgemini in consulting for over 20 years, and the last 10 plus mainly in consumer products and retail. And through that, I've been in all sorts of transformational projects with my clients. And for me, the big red thread in that is reducing waste and looking at the bigger picture, and to drive value through the projects that we do for all stakeholders of our clients. So I will be taking you through some industry insights on sustainability and circular economy in particular. And I also have a sneak preview into a non-published report from our Capgemini Research Institute, as well as references to other research that we do. Have a little bit of a talk about the effects of the current COVID crisis on the changes that we see. Have some illustrated examples across different segments within consumer products and retail, and some pointers on how to make that transition work for you in your industry. Anna, could you go to the next slide, please? So, as I mentioned, we do regular research from our Capgemini Research Institute, and a few recent ones have actually been on the consumer products and retail sector in particular, and also looking at both the consumer angle as well as the business point of view there. One recent one from last month is showing that there is a great drive for purpose that consumers see and want from their suppliers, from their retailers and consumer products manufacturers. They really believe that organizations can do and really should do more for humanity as a whole and drive their business not only for profit but also for purpose. And what we see is that consumers are actually changing their preferences in their buying behavior, in their shopping behavior, based on the social, economic, and environmental impact that products have, or that they perceive to have, because sometimes the image is a little bit different than reality, or they're not fully informed. Also, we see that when the executives that we interview there, we're also seeing that the sustainability is a very important drive for their industry. But yet at the same time, only 60% feel that they are fully aligning sustainability to the rest of their business strategy and business objectives. So it's still a little bit of a siloed approach in some cases, instead of seeing it through, like with the circular economy, making it in every step of your supply chain, or your supply circle, I should probably say. Anna, could you go to the next slide, please? So what we also found in our research last month is that there is a huge gap between the actual percentage of consumers that are willing to change the behavior and what companies feel that consumers are willing to do. So if that's a bit of arrogance there, or they haven't quite come to terms with the fact that this change is really happening now, and I've picked the numbers from global and from Sweden there. So the perception of the organizations is that the consumers are moving slow, but at the same time, the consumers themselves are actually indicating that they want to move much faster. So there's a real big imperative for change to include sustainability in their propositions for these consumer products and retail companies. Now, of course, the whole COVID crisis has also had some impact, and in some respects, sort of accelerating this need to change, where you see a tendency of consumers and companies to put local sourcing, local production more prominently on the agenda, also because of the supply chain restrictions, of course, that we've seen as part of COVID. But at the same time, it's also not slowing down as much as you might expect. The one from hygienic purposes refurbished or used, or the non-single-use product. So I think that's really positive news for anyone who wants to prevent that curve of James sort of crashing down at the end. And you see that in the right bottom-hand corner, that consumers are not only doing this during this crisis where they feel that they need to think more consciously about health and health in a bigger picture, so also environmental health, but it is something that they feel that they will sustain after this crisis is over. So a call to action from the consumers, but also from other stakeholders that are driving this point on the agenda. Anna, could you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So what I wanted to talk about is a few segment examples that I want to highlight how companies are dealing with the different stages in the circle of circularity. So where they reduce, where they recycle, where they repair or refurbish, and also where they possibly refuse to go a certain route and thus reduce waste. So I think a common example in, or a better known example in apparel would be Adidas, who have worked on the future loop material, as they call it, where they use, for instance, ocean plastics such as fishing nets to be used in their shoes. This is, of course, an example of recycling at the end of the chain, but it also brings, if you go back to the topic on PLM and how to think about your sourcing of your materials, this means something else than buying pristine virgin materials from your plastics manufacturer and using that in your processes. So it's something on sourcing, but also on quality control, and it means that when you design your product, you need to consciously think about what can I do if I use these types of polymers instead of others to still get the functions of your, in this case, apparel, to meet the customer's demand and at the same time reduce my impact. Okay, so Adidas has also mentioned that they will be working on these 3D printed shoes made of one polymer only, and these will also then at the end of life be able to completely be broken down again and reused in the next pair of shoes. However, the business model behind that and also the returns process and including of the stores and the consumers, I have not seen come to life yet. The other example I have in this apparel section is Mud Jeans, who have adopted this model. I think it's a Dutch brand. They make jeans, Mud Jeans, and other basic clothes. And they have adopted a model where they use, first of all, biological and recycled cotton, but at the same time also have completely shifted the way they act with the consumer, because they've introduced their clothes as a service. So you can actually rent a pair of new jeans, keep it as long as you want, pay a fixed fee for the month that you've got it, and at the end return it. And when it's still in good condition, it can go on, of course, be properly washed and go on to the next consumer to be worn for a period of time. And you know that there are also consumers who like a worn look. So hey, you actually, with the same pair of jeans, you can work in different consumer groups there. And when it comes back and it's completely rags, then we can get, then they will recycle it, bring it back, and turn it into a new sweater or a new pair of jeans. So they have closed that loop, and because not all consumers have gone up to, I want to rent my jeans, no, I want to own them, they still also sell them, and then at the end of life you can also still return them back and make sure that your pair of jeans ends up as a new clothing item. Of course, that means something for both your intimacy with your customer base, the feedback you get from your customer base, and also on your production process, knowing what goes in and knowing what comes out and goes back in again. Okay. So then I want to talk about two examples in the food and beverages industry. So they're actually both Dutch origin companies. Peter Pot is a startup, scale-up I should say, who have addressed the packaging issue in grocery retail. So one of the issues, of course, in grocery retail is that everything is pre-packed when you go to the supermarket. And if you want to buy online, definitely everything will be pre-packed. And in dry goods, that's a lot of plastic. And that's the thing that they want to address. So what they do is they actually, they're an online dry goods grocery store, and they actually have they buy their products in bulk and also in reusable containers from their suppliers. So let's say a Unilever or something, they drop their goods in bulk at Peter Pot. They package it into these nice mason jar pots and are delivering those to the consumers with refunds on the pots. So they go back, they will be washed, and they will be refilled for the next consumer. Now, what they, of course, as a startup run into is a number of problems. First of all, getting the suppliers to deliver, not in bulk that is then in plastic, but bulk that is in containers. So they also need to work with their suppliers to change their packaging. Second thing that they run into is that those nice mason jars, they look great with glass, but of course they're very heavy. So in transport, that's something that they want to change, and therefore they have now extended their PLM process to also include the creation of their own pots. So they are right for this package-free supermarket concept, but at the same time also are more sustainable from a transportation cost and CO2 emissions perspective. Royal Swinkels family brewers, brewery company, works all over the world, different brands like Bavaria. Now, beer is and they have malteries and breweries, and beer is a very water-intensive production process. So not only the water that actually ends up in your can, but also the water that goes to waste as part of the process, rinsing the ingredients, etc., etc. And they have a circularity ambition on many parts. I think they want to be fully circular by 2020. But the thing I want to highlight here is that water. So there's a lot of wastewater in their process. And what they do, in some plants, they actually have built water cleaning facilities to clean the water so that it can be reused in the next cycle of production. In some countries, for instance, where they have breweries in Africa, water is also a scarce good, of course, in irrigation. They actually clean the water to a different level, but it can be then used to irrigate the fields of their farmers who grow their crops for the malt and the hops, etc., that go into the beer. And the funny part about their own wastewater cleaning is that they have a lot of sludge in that water. Now, that sludge you would consider as a sort of waste product, but in fact, it's become a very valuable byproduct because it's very rich in protein, and it can be used in all sorts of foods. So animal feed, but also human food with protein additions to get a fortified diet there. So something that was previously going out in James' loop as waste now actually is a new business line there. Again, that requires a lot of thinking. They will never go into animal feed, but it requires something of your ecosystem then to make that into a sensible business model. Hardwood and electronics, two quick ones then. Fairphone, company that you also may have heard of, they had an ambition to really be the most sustainable phone you could buy from many aspects, so completely mineral conflict free, and James already showed that minerals are a big issue, or are going to be a big issue in the future, but also making sure that everything can be recycled. So what they built is a telephone that if it breaks, or if you want to upgrade the camera or something like that, you don't, get rid of your whole phone, but you can have a modular phone where you can exchange the camera for one with higher pixels, and get and actually get the old camera back to Fairphone so they can recycle it. The same goes for if your screen breaks. I don't know. I have 3 sons, and sometimes the screen breaks, and it's a costly experience. Here, you can actually, as a consumer, change the screen because the phone is completely modular. So reducing waste in many stages of the life cycle of the product. Last one I want to highlight is Signify, also formerly known as Philips Lighting. They have a concept of light as a service. Of course, they have these LED lights, but they also have the fixtures that go around the LED lights. So if I look at retailers, which is one of their markets, they actually can sell light as a service, where everything can be customized because the fixtures are actually 3D printed, so they can be customized to have the retailer's logo in it, etc., and also be put up. And since it's a smart product, we're talking about PLM from different angles here. They can also do this, deliver the light as a service, including the maintenance, including assessing wear and tear, including feeding back what works well, what doesn't, including information on energy usage for the retailer. Now, that concept they are going to scale to consumer markets. It's not there yet, even though as a consumer you can already buy these Philips Hue lights with all sorts of smart features around it to reduce energy use, just get a longer life out of the product, etc. And also the fixtures, they are 3D printed in their own factories, and also made in such a way that they can be fully broken down again and molten down and used again in 3D printing for the next different piece of armature. However, also there they have the challenge of closing the loop and ensuring that they include the in this case and the consumer in the loop, that they know that at the end of life they don't just bring it to the dump, but get it back to whichever channel. So that also requires the collaboration in your channels to get it back, for it to be broken down, for it to be recycled into a new version, new update of the product. So the question in all of these stories is, how big do you make your cycle or circle in your business model, and who do you rely on or need to rely on to make it work for the bigger picture? Anna, can you go to the next slide? Thank you. So because sustainability and the circular economy really requires an end-to-end approach and systems thinking to make it work. And we already see in our research that scaling sustainability initiatives in a silo across multiple locations is difficult for a lot of organizations. So it's surely difficult to get it across silos within the organization, and then to include the ecosystem like the consumer and your manufacturer and any of your new customers that come from one of those byproducts that I mentioned. So collaboration and data sharing are really key enablers for these new business models, and making sure that you still get the quality of your products when you start to recycle there. The question then is, of course, who owns that cycle or circle? Is that you? Is that you in collaboration with your ecosystem? Is that one of your partners? And then how do you exchange your data with them? Anna, next slide, please. So I think the key takeaways here is that the time is really now. It's imperative from both the consumer angle as well as all of the other stakeholders. I mean, many governments have set ambitions on circularity by 2030, 2040, 2050 in Europe at least. And it requires, I think, for the people on this call who have this PLM angle, definitely a redefinition of what is included in PLM. And that means that your cycle just got bigger, but also more complex. And therefore, don't go it alone, but make sure that you use your partners, your stakeholders, and also your internal peers to make it work, and start small. Because I think that was one of the lessons from Fairphone. Don't try to boil the ocean, but every step should be an increment to that eventual goal for full circularity and full sustainability. So, as James mentioned before, we are referring to our loops of life point of view. Link and the picture are included and can be found on our website. And also, I think when we share the information around this website, you can also find the research that I alluded to by the Capgemini Research Institute, which is also available on our website. I think that concludes my part of the talk, and I don't know if any questions have come in the meantime, Anna?
Well, I'm just looking through the chat box, and we don't have any questions for your part, and I think it was a great content. People need to digest it a little bit, and we also, as Katja had mentioned, encourage you to download the report. We've put a link to that report into the chat box, so you can do it right away, and go download, read through it, and if there are any questions, the contact details for both James and Katja are in there. So you can contact them directly, and yeah, sustainability is part of our lives, and it's a really a topic close to our hearts. Matthias, any final words from your side?
Well, no, not actually. I just want to thank you all for attending the webinar. Really hope that you found it interesting and maybe some food for thoughts. If you have any questions, don't hesitate. Just reach out to me or to Katja or James. And this was the last session in our webinar series about PLM and its role in the age of Industry 4.0. And I really hope you found them interesting. And Anna, we will send out the links to the recorded webinars later, right?
Yeah. Everyone will get a chance to get a replay of all of our sessions, so you get an access to all 4 sessions. It doesn't matter if you attended only one or all of them. So also stay tuned. We're gonna do some more around PLM in our fall edition. So right after summer, we'll be inviting you to listen to some more great content on PLM as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that's all. Thank you all, and have a nice day. Thank you.
Enjoy
Bye-bye.
the summer. Stay safe. Bye-bye.